gather round me, children, I'll tell you the news. Don't worry about the names or dates, you already know it's true. The doctor hates your baby, the prime minister's a ghost, and all them folks are sailing here 'cause they're in love with boats. Superfoods can save us from all our evil sin. JFK and Elvis own a bar in Wisconsin. Vaccinations were created by the CIA to steal votes from Bernie Sanders and turn your babies gay. So click the link you think you'd like and get tooled for a fight against those lefty fascist communists who are leaning too far right.
Hi, and welcome to Not Another Fake Newscast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jerry.
And this is episode 2 of our new podcast.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed our new intro music.
Yeah, it's written by a good friend of ours. We'll leave his details up on the website so you can follow him on SoundCloud. I believe our track's even up there as well with the rest of his stuff.
Yeah, so remember now you can follow our Facebook and our Twitter. Our Twitter is at PGMcast, and our Facebook is
PGMcast as well. Yeah.
Spot on. And the website is www.notanotherfakenewscast.com. You'll get all of the episodes on there and get your link to the RSS feed. There's a contact form, and also every month we'll be putting the links to all the articles we mentioned in the show on there. So if you haven't looked at last month, you can get them, and for this month you'll be able to get them as well.
If you're following us on Facebook, over the next couple of days or so, I plan to put up some new information on some other media we're going to be looking into. I want to give Anchor a go. It's a app for verbal Twitter. It's probably the closest way to describe it. Essentially,
verbal diarrhea. I think it's probably going to be closer to the
more
show.
likely, but certainly, yeah, verbal Twitter. And you can talk to me, I can talk back to you. Me and Jerry will probably have kind of separate channels on there, but it'll all be linked up to the show.
Yeah, if listening to us for an hour and a half, 2 hours a month isn't enough for you, then seek medical help. Also, use the Anchor.
Yeah, and you can have 10 minutes of me in your ear regularly throughout every week, usually talking about a more conspiratorial look towards these things, but certainly on the same vein as what we talk about here.
I'll just be factual and boring probably, but hey ho.
One of us have to have chat.
So we were totally planning on talking to you about a theme this month, which isn't the theme that we're going to end up speaking to you about, because obviously things got real the past week.
The world went fucking mad, man, mad.
Yeah, so Syria, chemical weapons, US then bombing Syria, all the stuff that's been going on with Russia and the US, and it just seemed like it was the right thing to talk about, so that's what we're going to do.
I mean, there is obviously some underlying things that have happened since we were last here. There was stuff to do with the things that happened down in the UK and London, things that happened in Sweden. We're not going to really cover them as much today, but certainly there'll probably be something about that on our Anchor and on our Facebook over the next little while, and we'll probably bring it in at some point in one of our other shows when there's more information about it. It's just so early for there to be relevant facts or enough stuff to talk about for a whole episode or even components of the episode. So
starting then with Syria.
Wow.
What was your take on everything that's went on the past week?
There's hardly any words to describe. I mean, first and foremost, we have to say before we actually start talking about the news and stuff, the videos that are coming out are horrific. I mean, it is genuinely horrific. It's proper heart-tugging. I mean,
it's upsetting stuff.
As a parent as well, more so than anything else, it's not particularly nice to see, and that has certainly served a purpose for getting the information out there and possibly even helped permit actions that have occurred and retaliation and stuff like that from it.
Well, I would say we're all, certainly I know I am, guilty of, it gets to a point sometimes where you can only take so much in, you can only take so much heartbreak and misery that you see every day on the news that you kind of get a bit blasé to it, but some of the images that were coming out of Syria last week after the chemical attack really certainly at home to me. I was watching some at my desk at work, like at lunchtime, obviously, not during work hours.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I was like, there was tears in my eyes. Something, man, it's brutal to see when you're watching footage of like small kids struggling to breathe. When you're watching a man holding his dead twins in his arms and stuff, like it's harrowing stuff. So obviously, before we go into anything else, we just would like to say that our hearts go out to anybody affected out there, and we hope that there can be some sort of resolution to what's essentially been like 7 years or more of civil war in Syria. So on the back of that, obviously, we were kind of looking into the sources of some of the footage, where it was coming from. One of the first kind of pieces of evidence that we came across of first-hand evidence to people who've been suffering for these attacks was by a doctor who is sort of stationed, his volunteer working out in Syria in one of the hospitals, a guy called Shajul Islam. Dr. Islam, which is a crack name for a doctor who's Islamic. He presented evidence, via his kind of YouTube feed, via his Twitter, that points towards sarin gas having been used. He talks about the kind of pinpoint pupil effect that occurs when sarin gas is used. He states in his videos that there's been numerous chlorine attacks that are happening, in his words, nearly every day in Syria, but this was a marked difference. You couldn't smell chlorine from the bodies. He was pretty convinced it was sarin.
There is, however, a couple of strange things about Dr. Islam that we should talk about. I mean, we should certainly. I can't stress enough. I don't in any way, shape or form mean to discredit the man or anything like that. I mean, that's not what I'm aiming to do here. But
in our sort of pursuit of looking at the sources, looking at information, it led us down quite a dance. Finding out a lot of information about the guy. So first thing to mention is that he's been interviewed by quite a lot of the sort of major news outlets. Like in some areas he's kind of been hailed as a hero and stuff like that, which for working on these people he kind of almost objectively is. But you found some stuff.
Well, what I will say is that he was held and was going to trial for being a terrorist who was involved with the kidnapping of 2 reporters. One was the UK reporter called John, name escapes me at the present moment.
John Cantley, sorry.
Yeah, John Cantley, yeah.
And there was a Dutch guy as well.
Yeah, and the good news is he wasn't like actually prosecuted or anything for that.
No, I think first of all, when you sort of showed me, this guy's to trial for terrorism before. The 3 places that we found it first off were Breitbart, the Mail Online, the Sun. So we're kind of going
literally where I get all my sources. That was like my classic source catalogue.
And then. Yeah, but looked into it. True enough, he did. He was on trial. He was arrested as soon as he set foot in the UK after coming back from Syria. But he has never. It's basically all the charges against him were dropped. So you're like, okay, so right, fair enough. He's been pulled up coming in from Syria, maybe because he went over there, left the UK. He's been put on a watch list. He's been arrested when he came back in, but it's been proven that he's not a terrorist. However,
he's not actually been proven that he wasn't anything, because both of the defendants, both of the witnesses that were going to be there to give evidence, weren't able to give evidence, so the entire trial was dropped. So even though he is a free man and left and was never held accountable for, or I say held accountable, that's possibly even liable there, I do apologise. What I mean is, was never actually prosecuted in any way for any of the crimes that they had suggested he had committed.
But the reason that he wasn't was because basically their main evidence was the two witnesses, the two guys who had been taken hostage. John Cantley was unable to give evidence because this guy went back to Syria again and took hostage again.
He is literally the worst person at not being taken hostage ever.
But maybe because the first time he was taken hostage was in July 2012, it was only a week, and he got let out, and he was like, it's not that bad, I don't know what all the fuss is about.
Maybe he's like a fucking quality hostage.
Yeah, but now, the second time in November 2012, when he was taken, he's still, as far as I can tell, never been released. He's still a hostage of ISIS / Al-Qaeda / whoever the bad guys are over there.
Not to make light of his situation, but I heard it's because he makes like really good eggs Benedict.
They are known for their love of eggs Benedict. Yeah. But no bacon.
No, not with the bacon, just the eggs.
So that was why he wasn't able to give evidence in his trial. So yeah, well, obviously we're not saying he's a terrorist. What we are saying is that he was found kind of not guilty. All charges against him were dropped. But the flip side of that is that the reason that the charges were dropped against him are a bit shaky as well. The other thing is worth saying is that if the only evidence they had against him was two guys saying, oh yeah, this guy's a terrorist, and as soon as they weren't able to stand in court and say that, the case against him was dropped, then maybe it's a pretty flimsy case in the first place.
I would agree, but I mean, there's also a narrative that is there that I would just say keep your eye on him as a person, because he was in jail, in high security jail, before his trial was going to go ahead, and then he had to leave. Kind of following that, sorry about that. Kind of following that, he was also struck off the record for being a doctor last month in a private hearing that we don't actually know the ins and outs of. We just know it was some form of malpractice.
Yeah, but there were no witnesses. It wasn't a public hearing. It was a bit hush hush, a bit secretive. And
the Twitter channel / YouTube feeds and stuff that he uses to report everything did only come into existence in like August 2016. There's a lot of things that, if I was to present this to a certain minded person, some of the websites I frequent and the likes, they would say there's a lot of things that suggest maybe he could have taken a different view, or he could have decided that he was going to feed intelligence back to the British government or something like that, or something similar. All I mean is keep your eye on, we talk about always watching your sources, and one of the big sources from where this came from is a person who has some questionable attributes to his backstory to where he got to where he is now. I'm not saying that he is a terrorist, I'm not saying that he's a bad person, and in the most basic term, he is like straight up a fucking doctor doing doctor things, like going over and helping people. That's what he is doing, or certainly that's what he's selling himself as doing at the present moment.
I would direct you towards his Twitter, Shadul Islam. I'll post it on the website and whatever. Like he does show videos of him working with kids, of him working with people who are kind of suffering for the atrocities over there. So, you know, on some level, I don't think it really matters what side he's on, like, because he's following the Hippocratic Oath, he's helping people. But yeah, the information that he's given might be one-sided, one way or the other. You know, it looks like he's working in an ISIS hospital, for example, so he is going to present a certain narrative, and that narrative would be that it's Assad's forces who have perpetrated this attack. But, you know, there are other people who are suggesting that perhaps the Syrian Air Force might have hit a chemical weapons store that the ISIS have, and there are other people claiming all kinds of wild things.
All types of madness. Actually, so on that note, while we're there, some information that we again will provide. There was quite an interesting video that I watched let's roll it back to 2013. In 2013, there was obviously the quite widely publicised gas attacks, which were put down to being the Syrian army. On the day that they done that, there was a UN inspector there who was going to inspect their weapons, and said UN inspector said, and we have both a video and an article that we will provide, essentially said that as far as she can make out, there was no chemical. There was no chemical weapons, but the event in question wasn't perpetrated by the Syrian military, even though the general narrative for it for what we know from 2013 is that was committed by the Syrian military. The UN said that there's no obvious signs to say it was. So, bring it back forward to where we are now in 2017, even though, generally speaking, the generally accepted narrative of the sequence of events was that it was the Syrian army. We don't actually have any proof at all. We've got people who, as we said, may be aligned in a certain way that they're always going to blame the Syrian army over their allegiances anyway, saying it was. And we've got the Western European government saying it was the Syrian army, but they hold to benefit from it being the Syrian army.
Well, Carla Del Ponte is the name of the UN kind of weapons inspector that you're talking about, and she told Swiss TV that as far as she was concerned, there was no conclusive evidence that the attacks had been carried out by the Syrian government. Flip side of that, I would say, is that in the wake of those, the Syrians offered up like 1,300 tons of sarin and its precursors.
Oh yeah, it's not sarin. They offered up 1,300 tons of chemical.
Well,
weapons.
yeah, but it was made up of sarin and mustard gas and
the good stuff.
Yeah,
Calor.
Calor gas is my favourite. VX, sarin, VX, and
which is the one with the go faster stripes.
Yeah, so there's definitely.
I'm trying not to make light of this too much because it is a horrible subject. It's not our usual bit.
They, up until that point, Syria had not declared that they had any chemical weapons. After the last gas attack, which your doll Del Ponte is saying that she's not seen any evidence that it definitely was them, but the fact that they then signed up to the Chemical Weapons Convention, they gave away 1,300 tons of chemical weapons, and the convention that they've signed up to states that they won't use it. So yeah, why would they do that if they hadn't been responsible?
Well, so by that logic, it wasn't them.
What?
Well, by that logic, it wasn't them. Because if they signed up to it and then they hadn't produced any gas and stuff after.
No, I mean, yeah, okay. But I mean, yes, okay, I'm not saying that you can trust them necessarily, but because obviously prior to that, they were basically claiming they didn't have any chemical weapons, but they did perpetrate an attack, and then they did, or we think they perpetrated the attack. They certainly seem to have admitted guilt to me by then destroying their chemical weapons and signing up to weapons.
Yeah, admitted guilt to you.
yeah, they just called me up.
Jerry, it's a sad.
Dude, I had such a rough weekend. You won't believe what I did.
It was absolutely gassed.
People just like to tell me things. I don't know. I've just got one of those faces.
One of those faces that you can phone.
FaceTime. It was FaceTime, even though FaceTime didn't exist.
When in 2013?
I don't know. Probably did.
I mean, it was only like 4 years ago. I'm sure, FaceTime.
Well, I never used FaceTime then.
I
used Skype.
I never used FaceTime ever.
I use FaceTime when I'm offshore. Anyway, that doesn't matter.
It's neither here nor there. That's Jerry's common habits.
So the situation that we have now is that basically every major Western power are saying that it looks like Assad has carried out this bit of attack. Russia are saying no, that's not what happened. He has accidentally bombed a chemical storage plant that belongs to ISIS. Russia, in fairness, are the only major power in the world that are kind of pushing that narrative.
What I will also say is there's a blatant bit of garbage that's floating about the internet about the Su-22, which getting into some real boring facts here. So the Syrian government claimed that they certainly did a bombing run in the area at the time of the attack, or round about the times of when these gas attacks were meant to occur. They claim that they used a Su-22, which is a Russian-built fighter bomber. That is the current misinformation or the current false information or
fake news.
Fake news is probably is that the Su-22 can't carry a payload of modified chemical warheads. However, there is certainly a few people who I know and a couple of different websites who work for, amongst other people, the US Air Force, which you could argue have probably got a biased opinion and stuff, but these are on conspiracy websites where they're not towing the corporate line, if you will.
There's lots of evidence up there as which shows that Su-22s can be used to basically drop any kind of bomb.
Well, that's what they were saying. The guys who I've certainly seen speaking about it, who I've got a lot of trust in from the many, many years of information that they've brought us all, kind of shows that a bomb is a bomb is a bomb is a bomb. It doesn't really make any difference what the internals are, providing the external can always be modified to put different internals in for the most part.
Yeah, so any websites out there which are trying to tell you that this plane couldn't have been used to drop these weapons is falling out of their arse.
Straight up fake
basically.
news. That is fake news in its most basic term. That's so that's just another thing that we should talk about. The other thing as well is one of the main sources for the fact that it wasn't them that was doing it is like the Syrian government's national newspaper, and they're always going to be spinning a pro-government.
Well, are you saying that the Syrian national newspaper isn't independent and non-partisan
Balanced
publication?
news source. They're known for the balanced news sources as long as the balance is that the Syrian government have done no wrong.
I thought they were like the BBC of Syria.
That's exactly what they're like.
Oh, I see what you did there.
So that's kind of where we are with regards to who done it, which is, as a quick summary, the Western media, the Western allies say that it was the Syrian government. The Syrian government says it wasn't the Syrian government.
Well, I wouldn't even say that's necessarily true. America have said it's the Syrian government. We have said that they are to blame, if not 100%, definitely the people who perpetrated it, but they're to blame anyway for allowing this civil war to go on. The rest of Europe has kind of roundly admitted that they agree with Trump's actions to go ahead and bomb Syria, while at the same time saying that perhaps it would have been better to wait until it was controvertible proof before they went ahead and bombed.
Unfortunately, one of the Italian UN officials came out just after the attacks happened and condemned the Syrian government for acting on it under the name of his position within the UN, which then meant created a media backlash saying that it was the Syrian government before there was any evidence to show it. And again, we'll provide the article discussing why he probably shouldn't have said that, because he had absolutely no proof at all, and he is a respected member of the kind of greater UN Parliament.
But Donald Trump has basically been able to act the way he did on a kind of mandate of popular opinion. There's not too many people who have sort of been standing up there and saying, I really don't think that he should have went ahead and bombed the Syrians. He seems to be getting more or less global backing for it, if not definitely for his methods. Some people question the legality of it, etc. But I think there's a lot of people out there who are fairly disillusioned with, UN mandates, that kind of stuff. Like, it's the UN clearly not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing in Syria. So yeah, maybe it's not America's place to be the world police, but at the same time, he's not been roundly condemned for what he's done, has he?
No, but I'm going to throw it so. Here's a thought, and I'm not saying that there's some kind of overarching conspiracy, and even if I thought that, that's not where I was going to go with this in this podcast. But weirdly, I'm now witnessing Donald Trump bombing Syria and bombing Syrian government bases and being given carte blanche to do so of people who I know are liberal left-leaning people who are against war. Like, do you not think that, just as another side of the coin, that suddenly you're in a scenario where the liberal left are saying that it's okay for Donald Trump to be bombing places in Syria, which is...
It is a bit Alice through the looking glass territory. Like, on Friday morning, I found myself being happy to be watching Donald Trump on the TV announcing that he was bombing Syria, and that is not a place I expected myself to be, like 1 week prior to that. However, there's a couple of things about it that do rub me up the wrong way. It's a bit rich of Donald Trump to be kind of taking the moral high ground, saying, I really care about these Syrian people and I don't want to see them getting bombed.
I think you could have just stopped there. I really care about these Syrian people and I don't want to see them. I think it's exactly his stance.
It's pretty much exactly his
Yes.
stance on things. Yeah, I think that's terrible what's happening over there, but they don't want him coming here.
Thank fuck it's not over here. It's really
Yeah,
his
but,
standpoint.
so considering his kind of travel ban, everything else that he's tried to do, it's a bit rich for him to all of a sudden be claiming to be, caring.
The good guy.
It came at a time when his public opinion levels were riding pretty low. So I am not for a minute suggesting that there's any sort of conspiracy here. In fact, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. I want to say that. However, I do think there's possibly been a little bit of political opportunism there, because he's obviously got the whole Russia controversy brewing back in the US at the moment, which is getting worse and worse.
It's absolute political opportunism, not even a little bit. I mean, like, I can't begin to stress. I'm watching people who are very strongly liberal left. That was far too difficult for a Sunday, but saying that it's perfectly fine for Donald Trump to be bombing people in Syria, like, when the same people last week or 2 weeks ago were saying it's totally out of order that Donald Trump's bombing people in Syria. It's absolute political opportunism. He done this because he knew that because there's no honest, upstanding individual on earth on any side of any spectrum that's going to say children getting gassed is a totally acceptable thing.
No right-minded person is really, like, I mean, first of all, 2 weeks ago he wasn't bombing Syria, so nobody had the problem with him not doing it. The other thing is, surely you have to draw a line in the sand at some point when you say, well, this has gone too far, we can't allow this to happen. Because if, as I said earlier, it's easy to get blasé about pain and suffering that happens to people, because you see it every day on the news, right? It happens all around the world. That was something that kind of did make everybody sit up and take notice, even, in amongst the sort of general bleakness which is beamed into our homes every day through the news. That was something that made people sort of sit up and take notice. So if we had then went, but it's just another thing that's happened, let's not bother doing anything about it. Is that the right call?
Well, is eye for an eye the right call? Like, what I'm getting at with that question is...
But it's not an eye for an eye, is it? He didn't bomb Assad's kids with chemical weapons.
No, he didn't. But what he done was, he didn't also completely and utterly eradicate any ability for the Syrian military to start just bombing other people.
Yeah, but he did target their air bases, which they suspected might, be capable of carrying out these operations.
Show of force to say that I'm going to do this again, which is essentially at the point that you're getting to an eye for an eye. Like, I mean, either we're going to war or you're not going to war. The bit in between saying, well, better not do that again or we'll missile you again. I mean, at what point does then Russia step in?
I would say it was less an eye for an eye and more of a slap in the wrist. Now, he warned the Russians that he was doing it half an hour before, as per the piece of legislation, which the deconflict piece of legislation, which prevents them from flying in the same zones at the same time, prevents Russian forces and the US forces coming into conflict. This worrying thing on some levels is that Russia, when they came out afterwards and condemned the attacks, have also rescinded that agreement. So they have now said, we're not going to deconflict this situation. We are not going to warn you guys half an hour in advance if we're going to be flying in particular areas. So you do have a potential for conflict between Russian and US forces. But again, given the issues that Trump is having with his administration, with his advisors, and the whole Russian controversy, which we'll get into next, it does again seem like a little bit potentially a little bit of political opportunism, distancing himself from being an ally with Russia, making it appear he's big and strong, prepared to stand up to Russia, and making it look as if there's not some sort of background agreement between him and Putin that has been ongoing since prior to the election, which there's mounting evidence to suggest that all of those things did happen.
This isn't conjecture. This is where we're going to go in the show. Not in a not so distant future, like in this show, we will get over to that and actually where that is. But I would argue at that point that either they've scared the Syrian government enough that they'll not do it again, or they do it again, and then the next time that America decide to retaliate, they could be involved in a conflict with Russia over this. So is that where general public consensus is? Because that's where we're being taken, whether it's consensus or not. I mean, I get that the action in question, there had to be an action, but as the government hadn't taken ownership of doing it, and we have no proof that the government done it, and we then attack the government bases that we think might have done it based on intelligence that we've got enough intelligence to say that it might have happened, but we don't actually have any intelligence to say it 100% definitely did happen, that we have been shown as the general public by the Syrian government, to then put us into a scenario where are we then saying that it's okay for general consensus now to be at the level where we're willing to get into a conflict over a proxy territory that is Syria with Russia?
Well, I would say there's a couple of things to that. One, I think that you would need to have a kind of unilateral agreement, a UN agreement.
It's not
you would
what
have to
UN
have.
stands
You would have. I know it's not what UN stands for. you would need to have an agreement. You would need to have proof that Assad did carry this out. You have an issue whereby you're not going to get Russia to give up on Assad's regime very easily, because Syria is their only port outside of their own country. It's their only freshwater port. It's their it's the place that they can move boats into the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna give that up easily at all. So yeah, if you do get into a conflict there, you are going to be getting into some sort of direct conflict with the Russians. I do think that the Syrian civil war has, on some levels, been a proxy war between the US and Russia and the UK, and at various times, between 2009 and the present day, we have backed the rebels and Assad, depending on which way the wind was blowing for us at the time. The rebels who we backed during the Arab Spring, who were when we tried to oust Assad, turned out to be ISIS, so we then decided that they were the bad guys again. And again, yeah, this is all stuff that can be backed up. We'll be able to share articles to show all of this.
ISIS that the Turkish government supports still,
Yeah,
even though they're part of the UN.
yeah.
I'm just checking.
Yeah, that's the one.
Just checking.
There's quite a lot of evidence that there's backdoor dealings between Russia and ISIS on they're shipping oil out of the region, and giving money directly to terrorist-backed organisations. But yeah,
Same
the
with
Middle East is messy. So I don't know what the answer to it is. If I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this shit with you, would I?
I'd probably be getting paid more if I had the answer, to be honest, I would imagine.
But I do think that this has certainly swayed public opinion largely towards some sort of military involvement from the Allied kind of forces, the Western forces, against Assad's regime. But I think something like Jeremy Corbyn, his stance on it was that it should be through the medium of talks, and legislation, and battling a peace deal between Assad and the rebels. I think that's wishful thinking when they've been at war for 6 years. But yeah, something's got to give eventually, and if you can't turn a blind eye on what's happening over there forever, because it's causing a massive humanitarian crisis as well.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely is indeed. I mean, so if we go back to Dr. Islam just briefly, he was saying that they were running out of ventilators, and they were having to rework the ventilators from their helicopters and the likes to see if they can use them in the wards for the amount of people that were coming in. Again, I can't begin to stress how much of the information that's coming is absolute 100% genuine, how much it's propaganda. We'll never know because we're not there. So it's hard to tell quite how many people this is affecting and stuff.
But a lot of the stuff that Dr. Islam has said is backed up in Al Jazeera articles and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. As I said, though, there's maybe I'm an incredibly jaded human being, and when I look at sources from any side, if you can always peg them to a side, it always feels like it's always pushing an agenda. Maybe not as a primary process, but it's always pushing an agenda. But yeah, I think we should maybe look at America's involvement in Russia possibly now, because I think we've done most of what we had for Syria.
Done most of what we had for Syria.
To be honest, it's fucking bleak, in the nicest possible way. The entire Syrian, fuck, no matter where I sit or where Jerry sits, where anyone sits, and regarding who you think is right or wrong in this scenario, there's kids getting killed. That's bleak. So we should probably move to something a bit cheerier, like Pizzagate.
Most people might not know about Pizzagate, so do you want to sum Pizzagate up?
So in the most basic term, Pizzagate is I think it's reasonable to call it a conspiracy now, but essentially it's a scandal that links Hillary Clinton and her greater group and party and people who she's been involved with, being involved in essentially like a pizza shop in Washington that keeps kids for paedophiles in its basement.
Yeah, this is not true, by the way.
I'm not saying that this is. I'm just saying that's what Pizzagate is. It's this theory, which is right. So, actually, if we actually want to go to this, there is a couple of people that are going to come up in the next stuff that we're talking about. Some chat, a couple of members of the alt-right who are pushing this agenda, are pushing the fact that Hillary Clinton and her party and people are involved in paedophiles in pizza shops in Washington. And I know that sounds fucking ridiculous. The more I say it, the more fucking ridiculous it sounds. But that's where they are. There's some big names. Pedo pizza. Yeah, we'll put topping. Anyway, that was going to get dark. But yeah, so this is being pushed by, like I said, some big names involved with Trump and the alt-right. And well, to give you an idea,
I thought this was supposed to be a light story, because so far we're talking about pizza and pedos.
Well, I like pizza.
Not so keen on the pedos.
No, it's so keen on the pedos.
Anyway,
they keep the kids in the basement, but there isn't a basement at the pizza shop in question. So the chances of that are slim.
Well, yeah. So essentially, what happened was that this controversy kind of caught fire on the internet. There was a whole load of people who were believing this fake news story that, and the pizza shop itself was being named online. So essentially, you got to the point where a baying mob turned up there, demanding that these kids were freed, demanding to see the basement. We don't have a basement, and they hammered the place, demanded to come in there, and it all stemmed from this crazy theory that people had on the internet. This was during the election, by the way, so it's slightly old news, but also quite amusing stuff. Recently, the sort of controversy that has surrounded the presidential election has been a bit less humorous. I don't know if a lot of you will remember, but in the sort of direct aftermath of Trump being elected, there was some noises coming from the Democratic side that there might have been hacking from Russia involved in the election.
I think you can actually bring it back further than just hacking, just general collusion with the Russians to create fake media, to be involved in the kind of disruption of the way that the information was going out to the American people, and just creating havoc, which kind of culminated in the claim that there was actually direct hacking that was changing the information regarding who actually won the election.
Now, I initially took this with quite a heavy pinch of salt. It was the same sort of stuff that came out in the aftermath of the no vote in Scotland and independence referendum. There was a lot of people who just didn't really want to accept the result, who started jumping up and down and saying that the votes had been tampered with, etc. I don't personally buy that could have happened on the scale that would have led to the vote being changed, but in this particular case of Russian collusion in the Trump administration, it seems there's a mountain amount of evidence to suggest that it did happen. the guy, John Brennan, John O'Brennan, sorry, who was the CIA director kind of last summer.
It's a decent summer job.
It's not, yeah. It was just he had to go back to school after that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I look really good on the CV.
Director wanted.
But yeah, they basically told senior lawmakers in classified briefings last summer that the CIA that they had information indicating Russia was working to help make Donald Trump the president. And that finding didn't emerge publicly until after. There's quite a lot of evidence coming through. The briefings indicate that intelligence officials had evidence of Russia's intention much earlier than previously thought. They revealed that there was a split in opinion between the CIA and the FBI. And the FBI, a number of officials, they just thought that Russia's cyber attacks were aimed at disrupting the political system, whereas the CIA believed that they were legitimately trying to get Trump elected.
I heard the FBI stole the CIA's mascot, and that caused all the tension, like, you know, American college football movie. Like I presume that was the point they fell out over. It had nothing to do with the Russians. Nothing to do with the Russians.
Oh no, you knew about the split.
I knew it was the split.
Yeah.
The split goes out. Everybody knows about the split.
You could tell they were just being all weird at lunchtimes and stuff like that. Yeah, when we went out for a night out, they weren't happy.
Caused problems. That's why I stopped drinking with the CIA.
Well, yeah, I was always pally with the FBI anyway.
And Blackwater and the NSA.
Oh, don't even start about that. That's a story. That's a story for another time.
It's a story for nothing that can be published.
Yeah. I once drank whiskey and smoked cigars with like loads of members of different security.
I don't think you should be telling a story at all, Gerard.
Right, okay, well, moving swiftly on. So yeah, he 10 weeks before the election, then John Brennan was so concerned about the evidence that was coming out that he started individually briefing 8 top members of Congress on secure phone lines to tell them about it. Now, they're not, the papers and stuff don't actually have the information about what the new intelligence was at the time, but this led to a guy, Harry Reid, who was the top Democrat in the Senate. He spoke to Mr. Brennan, and then afterwards he basically went and spoke to some people without mentioning the fact that he'd been talking to Brennan. After he spoke to Harry Reid, Mr. Reid got in touch with James B. Comey, who was the director at FBI at the time. He never mentioned the fact that he had the CIA briefing, but he told Mr. Comey, and there's evidence of this, that he had recently become concerned that Russia's interference was more extensive than widely known. In his letter, the senator cited what he called mounting evidence of a direct connection between the Russian government and Donald Trump's presidential campaign, and said that it was crucial for the FBI to use every resource available to investigate. What Mr. Reid didn't know is that the FBI had already opened a counterintelligence inquiry a month before that to examine links between Russia and people tied to the Trump campaign. But that was secret even for folk in Congress. So all of this stuff has been going on in the background since last summer. The CIA and the FBI have suspected that it's been happening, and obviously it's come out in the past couple of weeks that, yeah, looks like there's lots of evidence that people have been talking to Russian officials. That Sergei Kislyak, who is like the top recruiter of spies basically in America for Russia. Trump's people in the Trump administration had been meeting with this guy.
Well, see, so it's weird because the National Security Advisor for Obama's presidency, Susan Rice, she had sought to get an unmasking of the campaign officials who were picked up during the surveillance. So she was actually pushing, and has been pushing, to find out, you know, kind of who has been earmarked, if you will, by the FBI and the CIA.
Oh, she wants him named.
She wants him named. She wants him to be put out into the public eye, or maybe not the public eye, but certainly brought to Congress, so they can see, you know, who it actually is. Because obviously there's only so much of that information that the CIA and the FBI are bringing. But what's really crazy is there's a guy Kernovich, which is weirdly Russian sounding. But anyway, he's a lawyer in the United States. He's part of the alt-right movement. He's actually...
The alt-right movement or the alt-right movement?
He's alright, man. He's alright, but he's also part of the alt-right movement.
Oh, I don't like them so much.
No. They're not alright.
No,
they actually are all right. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Literally, everyone
right.
in the alt-right
Fully
are
right.
all... Anyway, neither here nor there. He's been accused of being a purveyor of fake news, so I fucking love him because he literally gives us a lot to work with. He has got a website which I urge you not to go to called Danger in Play, and that's just as actually quoted as being a magnet for readers with a taste of stories with no basis in fact, which...
And am I not right in saying that they're one of the main sources for the Pizzagate scandal?
Then this is kind of what I was going to get to. So he is very against all the stuff that Susan Rice is doing, probably because this may be liable, but sounds right Russian, right? And is a lawyer and doesn't want the names of the people who are involved with the Trump administration to come out that have been dealing with the Russians. I'm not saying that he is involved, but if you weren't involved, you probably wouldn't be trying quite as hard to not have the names go out into the public. But yeah, he has both been he's pushed both Pizzagate and that Hillary Clinton has Parkinson's disease, and none of them actually have any actual fact at all. I mean, she might actually have Parkinson's, but it's not. There's no evidence to say that she does, unless he has some evidence that he's not bringing. And yeah, as I said, he's big on the old paedophile ring that is Pizzagate. But
he's big on the paedophile ring.
He's probably big.
He's one of the top ranking members, or
he's probably big in the paedophile ring. I would imagine. Maybe I've totally misunderstood what a paedophile ring is.
Is it like pineapple ring? Like, you know, there's people who don't like pineapple on their pizza.
I nearly said something fucking horrendous. So we'll move really swiftly on. I actually thought something, then thought we're recording this.
Right,
I can't. Anyway, he's like I said, so he's really pushed against the unmasking. He's actually saying that he thinks it's possibly illegal, and he thinks it's essentially unconstitutional that they're trying to push for that. What I will say is that ex-CIA analyst Ned Price, so he must be very ex because I've got his fucking name, went to MSNBC and has said that, quote, there are certainly legitimate reasons and very routine reasons for an analyst or a policymaker to request unmasking. Unmasking is not akin to leaking, and it is part of the routine process. So I mean, like, he's forcing this and he's trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, if you will, to prevent the information coming out. So that kind of, because he's part of kind of the greater Trump experience, like maybe not main Trump allies, but certainly part of that kind of movement, and he's forcing against it and he's trying to make out as if it's illegal, it does suggest that they're scared of something and there's something to hide. What I find even more fucking crazy is this information isn't being fed to us in the UK. I mean, we're seeing this.
There's currently 3 ongoing investigations into collusion between senior Trump advisors in the election and Russian officials. Those are ongoing in America right now. It's a huge story in America. There's stories in the New York Times, you know, Huffington Post, major news sources every day talking about this, and yet we don't seem to be getting fed any information about it in the UK mainstream media, which does strike me as slightly odd. They've basically there's proof as well that there was an actual centre kind of set up in somewhere in Russia where they had up to 1,000 internet trolls working on producing fake news stories.
Can we just say that building must have been fucking awful to be in? Like, I mean, imagine being in a room of 1,000 internet trolls, just absolute grade A neckbeard assholes as far as the eye can see.
Winding everybody up.
The place would be fucking reeking of BO, it'd probably quite dark, everybody be eating Cheetos, it'd be, it's be unpleasant from start to finish.
Sounds pretty brutal.
I'd be disagreeing, but agreeing all the time. couldn't actually imagine anything worse.
But yeah, an army of more than 1,000 people potentially to create fake anti-Hillary Clinton news stories.
This is from a CIA report, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is actually official.
And that they targeted keys. This was actually reported in the Independent, so you know this at least is coming through. But this was a couple of weeks ago. I think this was in the Independent, as opposed to like all of this week. There's been more and more stuff coming out about this investigation.
The stuff that I'm saying about Mrs. Rice, I'm not really sure if she's married, but is from 5 days ago. I mean, so it's actually, I mean, that is current news. And one of the things that they've kind of brought to it, one of the things they've spoke about is the fact that through all of this, through all of the scenarios that's happening, there's been things like the Trump administration talking about Obama line tapping Trump towers.
Wiretapping.
Yeah, is that not what I said?
Line tapping.
Line tapping. Oh, they're tapping the lines. So yeah, but with that, the question is, are they putting out one of these two sides are fake news on the most basic scenario? Is the Obama administration to blame, and are they doing things wrong, and are they trying to kind of break up the power that Trump's got? Or is Trump blaming the Obama administration to move away from?
Well, one of them's misdirecting. You would suggest.
Yeah, one of them's certainly misdirecting.
But I would suggest that there's not currently 3 ongoing investigations into any wrongdoing with regards to Obama's administration.
Another beautiful thing, you're saying 3 investigations, but there actually was a RICO investigation into Obama as well. Literally just before, not Obama, sorry, into Trump as well. Whoa, that was, I just...
Like breaking news.
No, but into Trump, sorry. So just before he got the presidency, he was Trump University, or whatever the bizarre school that he had set up. He was going to be going to court around 2 or 3 weeks before he got the presidency. Under RICO charges. To give you a quick summary, essentially RICO charges means that they can freeze all your assets, but they can freeze all your assets in a way that they don't usually do. They can freeze all your assets in all the states and offshore assets and stuff like that, so you don't have access to them.
It's like mainly being enforced against like mafia.
It was brought for dealing with people like Al Capone and the likes.
Yeah.
I mean that's where it comes from. That's it. I actually think it's possibly mentioned in Goodfellas. Certainly one of the movies.
It's a big part of The Sopranos.
Aye. And yeah, he was going up for that, and conveniently got the presidency. And actually, strangely, before he even had to make the settlement, his lawyers or legal team had actually requested that if they could put back that day, the settlement day, till after he became the president. Which one would imagine, I can't guarantee, but you would imagine that there's a scenario where once you're the president, you can probably just tell people to fuck off and you're not settling, right? Because you're straight up, the president.
Yeah, but he walked into the presidency with outstanding fraud charges.
He didn't have to. No, all he had to do was because it was 2 weeks before. He didn't have to go to court. It just says we'll just settle 25 million, which is literally a drop in the ocean. And yeah, so that means he walked free from that. Something that would have absolutely not just ruined him as a person, but all the subsidiaries of his family and stuff like that. Because essentially, when RICO charges come into play, anything that he has got any affiliation with would have all been looked at harshly. And yeah, so that's another. So there was actually technically, as he was going into the presidency, or where he is now, there's been 4 heavy investigations into him. One of which has been settled, and there's now 3 investigations still ongoing to insinuate that he's been affiliating himself with another government from another country. I mean, I don't know, is that treason? Is that treason? Does that mean anything?
Well, I would like to state at this point that I don't think there's any current evidence, certainly, that Trump has had any direct contact with anybody in the Russian administration, but it is senior advisors and the people kind of closest to him throughout his campaign who are accused of doing it. So you would...
But could you not argue that the closest people in his campaign are people like his daughter and his son-in-law and stuff like that? So I mean, if it's people that are like that, the fact that he wasn't there personally, like, for all the fact that I like to say the good man's an idiot, it's probably not that stupid.
But again, I don't think that they've been pulled that far into it yet either. They certainly haven't been named. There are people who have quit over this already in his administration. I don't have their names to hand, but we'll certainly make sure that all that information is available on the website. In terms of the internet trolls, right? Need to get into that. So the guy, Senator Mark Warner, who's like the Democrat ranking member, of the Senate. He said, we know about the hacking, and he's actually part of one of these, he's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
So he actually deals with hacking.
Yeah, and he's involved in this, and another guy, Republican Senator Richard Barr, they appeared together at a press conference to talk about it. And the Mr. Warner guy said, we know about the hacking and selective leaks, but what really concerns me as a former tech guy is at least some reports that there were upwards of 1,000 internet trolls working out of a facility in Russia, in effect taking over a series of computers, and they can then generate news down to specific areas. He said, it's been reported to me and we've got to find this out, whether they were able to affect specific areas in Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania, where you would not have been receiving from whoever your normal vendor might be, but they were taking over people's computers and sending them news which looked like it was coming from a legitimate source.
So essentially the sources were being redirected, so you typed in the Independent and it would redirect from the Independent. I mean, so...
They were hacking in.
Just a quick bit of background, I work in IT, that's kind of where my bit is, so I'm not going to get too technical with it, but yeah, in the most basic term, they redirect where your computer points. So when you type in something like the Independent, usually what would happen is you go out to a big computer somewhere and you say, I'm looking for the Independent, and it says it's here through a naming server will point to the location that you've asked for. They're redirecting that to point to make here one of their servers somewhere that's then giving them news that for all intents and purposes to a normal person looks like the Independent's website.
Yeah, and it was saying stuff like Hillary Clinton had taken bribes, Hillary Clinton had Parkinson's, stuff like that. And the boy, Mr. Barr, who's the Republican guy, said that he didn't want to take snapshots of where the investigation stood, but he hinted that the committee had spoken to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who was Mr. Trump's Director of National Intelligence, but had to step down from his post after ties to foreign governments were revealed. So he's one of the people that's already had to admit that he was talking to the Russians and had to resign from Trump's administration.
Surely of all of the people in Trump's administration, he's the likely person to be talking to like the Russians and some of
this was prior to being in that position. I think it's interesting as well that our good pal Steve Bannon, I like to call him Sean.
That's his
weekend name. So Steve Bannon, he has been moved from his position on the National Security Council.
Yeah, off the Security Council. He's actually fall from that. Now, there's actually a couple of things to talk about with Bannon. What we did cover before, actually not in our last episode, don't think, but in our pilot episode, was he does have a military background. He was in the Navy.
Yeah.
So he was
in the Navy.
I believe he sailed all of the 7 seas. And I believe he's also putting Mr. Trump's mind at ease, which is convenient. Well. So he's meeting all the criteria.
Seems like an ideal guy to be your advisor then.
And they want to use a new recruit. But yeah, so he did have a background in military when he went into it. He's also a racist, and I'm happy to say that. I don't even care if it's liable. He's a racist. He started Breitbart News. He's alt-right he's not even alt-right. He's just right-wing. I mean, there's nothing alternative about him. And what I was going to say is what's quite interesting about him at the moment is he's actually in a weird scenario, because every part of him would suggest that he's not involved in dealing with the Russians, because he's so very fucking nationalist, as in he's in a bit of fallout with Trump's son-in-law, where he perceives Trump's son-in-law as a globalist and not enough of a nationalist, doesn't care enough about America and worries more about America and the bigger world and where that's going to be. And I mean, they're literally in a bit of a shitstorm, throwing information at each other and stuff. We're kind of getting a bit off topic with this, but in the most basic term, what's happening is the son-in-law has been accused by some of the higher-ranking Trump officials that sit on the alt-right spectrum, and again, we'll provide some videos and stuff like that, some information that's quite interesting on this. They've suggested that he is sending text and actively trying to push stories to badmouth and say terrible things about Steve Bannon to kind of shape the way that the public view him, which is really...
He had a word with Paul, that's why Paul called him a racist.
Aye, I'm not going. That's how I operate. That's how I operate.
On a strictly top bribing basis. Whoever pays the most, they'll say whatever shit they want.
That's exactly how I operate. I was kind of joking before, but literally, as we do this podcast, if you've got an agenda to push,
that's Paul's modus operandi.
That's it. I will push any. Anyway, Roger Stone is the person in question that I'm talking about. So Roger Stone is like is Trump's albino assassin is actually what he was called, and one of the things that I was doing. And he's came to the defence of Steve Bannon. He said that.
Yeah, but he would, because he's also like a major contributor to Breitbart.
Yes. But he's came and said that he doesn't believe that Bannon's as bad as being made out. But then what gets even more fucking mental, and this is where it gets really strange, is Alex Jones has stepped in. Alex Jones, you know.
Mental case, Alex Jones. we're not talking about the Welsh lassie who presents a one show. We're talking about the conspiracy nut who shouts.
Loves a good shout. If one day we can get him on here, we will do that. That would make.
I don't want to be in the same room as that guy. He's terrifying.
We'll Skype it. I don't want to be in the same room as you, unless we can get Alex Jones to pay us to go to America.
Okay, I'm up for that.
But yeah, so Alex Jones has came out and said that Kushner, like Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, that he doesn't think that he's doing anything bad. He's actually said that he's a good-looking man.
I said he was a smart, attractive man.
Smart, intelligent man.
He definitely called him attractive.
Smart, intelligent, attractive. Some kind of sequence of events like that. I think he might like him.
Yeah,
I think
he might fantasize.
I think he might like him quite a lot. But he said that he doesn't believe that he's doing anything wrong. So what we've now got is we're now getting PC information from essentially a whole plethora of people that I don't believe telling us that the other side are the bad folk. And to be perfectly honest, if any of those people were cited as sources in a different scenario, I would presume that they were making it up for their agenda. We've now got two sides of a coin making up for an agenda. One is saying they're a globalist, one is saying that they're a nationalist.
I mean, I was going to suggest that perhaps Steve Bannon had been moved for the National Security Council as a strategic move because they are kind of expecting him to be caught up in this investigation.
I know that's what you were alluding to, and that's kind of why I wanted to get that piece of information out first, where because of the way he stands as a person, and for those who have listened to both this show and the pilot show when it was kicking about, people were aware that I am by no manner of means a fan of Bannon.
He's not a Bannon fan.
I'm not a fanin. We'll work on that. But yeah, so, but still, there's a weird scenario. There's something in me that said he's so nationalist and he's so against. I mean, Russia does hold a lot. Why would he want with Russians?
Well, because I think it's been said before that there's a certain type of Republican who believes that the Democratic Party are more of a threat to the national security of America than Russia are.
Roger Stone actually talks about it in one of the videos that we had been watching. That very thing, that essentially Russians are no more dangerous to the country than the last Obama administration, for example, which is pretty mental. Which is fucking crazy, man. Like, I mean, there's no words to describe how mental that really is. And in fact, Jerry, you'd been looking at some polls regarding the Russians and being involved with the American elections. Is that no?
No, well, it was a CBS poll at the minute that it revealed that half the Americans now believe that Russians interfered with the election to help Donald Trump. So you're kind of at a stage now where even if that isn't true, it's already out there. It's like a fake news kind of thing. So we've got two scenarios, because you had Donald Trump accused Obama of wiretapping. So that's either true or it's not. The evidence is at the moment overwhelmingly that it isn't true, but there is a certain amount of population that will believe it. Now, there are people out there that believe that the investigations and the attempts to align Donald Trump with Russia are a concerted attempt by his opponents in the Senate and Congress, and even some would say within his own party, certainly from the Democrats, to discredit him. whether you believe that or not, it's up to yourself. But that is a theory that a lot of people on the right in America believe. If that is true, then it's working.
But yeah, so I said I wasn't going to talk about this, right? Because I said that we weren't going to aim for this today. But there's a totally relevant scenario here that I think we should bring up, and we'll talk about it more in another episode. But the stuff that happened down in London.
Yeah.
If you followed the news and you were watching it in live, news told you who it was that committed the crime. They gave you a name. They told you who it was that done it. They said, and I don't have the name.
It was Trevor. It wasn't Trevor Brooking because he was a West Ham footballer. It was Trevor. I'll come back.
It was like the boy from Coventry or something like that, or no, Oxford or something like that, wasn't it?
It was the guy who
Cambridge.
was the right hand man of Abu Hamza, hooks for hands.
Which
right
was lucky.
Man,
which is lucky he was the right hand man, because it means that he could pick things up for him. But yeah, so on that, we were told that that's who it was. I mean, that was a person who was involved with funding terrorist activities, who wasn't allowed to leave the country but got picked up in Turkey. And when he wasn't allowed to leave the country and get picked up in Turkey and then sent back to the UK, he went to jail, where currently he still fucking is.
And was when
the attacks happened. So the
Trevor
news...
Brooks was
Trevor
his name.
Brooks. So, is he not a DJ?
No, that's a different guy.
Nice, glad we cleared that up. But we were told, so right now I can go out in the street, right now I can go to people at work and ask who it was that done it, or say to them, we don't know who's done it, and they're like, we don't know who was done it. It was that guy, Abu Hamza guy, Trevor something,
Oh, yeah.
It'll be kind of vague. But people believe that that's who it was that done it, because the news outlets put that piece of information out, and they told us that.
To be fair, it wasn't news outlets, it was specifically Channel 4 News. I was watching it at the time, right? So, was sitting in the house watching...
Which is a news outlet.
Watching it, but it wasn't all of them. The point I mean, it was one specific one, and it was like...
Well, it must hold up a mass percentage of the people who are watching
no,
the news.
No, definitely. I'm not saying it's not a big thing, but what I'm saying is that I believe that it was a mistake. I believe it was a mistake, and I believe that at the time they made a call that we're going to name this person, on the news, because they'd done it right after the ITV News, right after BBC News, which I had also been watching, and which didn't name the guy. And then Channel 4 News was on for about 2 minutes, and they had they identified this guy. And I remember, I think my mum and dad were around at the time, and I said to my old man, I was like, that's a real big coup. They're naming the guy. Like, if they've got that information, they've got it right. They've named him before anybody else. Like, it'll add viewers, for their next week and whatever. It's a big coup for them. Now, so because obviously the person who's made the decision knows journalism better than me, hopefully. They've obviously known that it would be a big coup, and they have looked at the evidence that they had available to them, and they have made a call to name that guy on TV because they've been maybe 80%, 85% certain that it was, and thought it was worth making a call to be the first people to name him. Obviously that has backfired on them. They've probably gotten a lot of shit over it. Somebody's probably fucking lost their job over that, and if not, then they're certainly damaged their reputation severely. But
the general public think that's who it was that done it.
Well, not the general public, just a certain percentage of them. Well, like, I know for a fact they will, because I did.
Yeah, but so did I.
I did the next day, and it was the guy who was shaving my head. It was my hairdresser who told me that, oh no, they got that wrong, and then they had to retract it. And I think they actually retracted it at the end of the show, but I maybe never saw the last couple of minutes, so I never saw that. So I went around for like at least 24 hours believing that this guy had perpetrated this crime.
But that's what the danger of, which is almost worse than fake news, that's what the danger of
misreporting
facts. So you've then got a scenario where whether or not Trump administration has been absolutely involved with Russia across the entire of the administration, enough people now think it in the United States that has a negative effect on the way that people view the Trump administration.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that people who are on the kind of far right or on the right, or who are Trump supporters who believe that there is a media campaign against him, that's only going to strengthen their belief.
Oh, certainly. But even if there, the thing is, even if there wasn't a media campaign against them, like, the beauty is there doesn't need to be, because all they have to do is, if you've got something like,
just hang around long enough when Trump's about.
I say something fucking stupid anyway, man. Just wait, give him his Twitter late at night, and then he'll deal with it. But yeah, so it does create a problem. It creates an issue with when you're looking at the facts. That if you've been given any one fact that's wrong, but you've been given it from a source which, like BBC News, for example, Channel 4 News, which is generally seen
a very reputable source.
Out of certainly them, ITV and BBC, you would always presume that you would go to Channel 4 if you wanted to get the most balanced view, or certainly the most heartfelt view and stuff as well. I mean, like Jon Snow, not Game of Thrones. Jon Snow is also
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
That Jon Snow knows nothing.
I'm an established broadcaster, thank you very much.
And he is. I mean, Jon Snow in question that we're talking about here, for any viewers, and by viewers I mean listeners, outside the UK, Jon Snow is a Channel 4 news reporter who is
very well respected.
Very well respected. He's, I mean, I don't know him personally, but he comes across particularly as a very genuine guy. He has cried at particularly unpleasant stories. He's brought stories that he's not meant to bring forward. He's done good things for journalism in the UK, and for him to be, even obviously, I never seen the news report, so I don't know if it was him that was reporting at the time, but it's something that's directly...
Whichever Brooks it was, it came directly from his mouth.
Right, so there you go. So, I mean, he's a respected newscaster, and if you've got the same thing, now I imagine there's probably some Fox newscaster that some people in America think is reputable, and probably on the other side of that there's some CNN newscaster that, I mean, and I don't know the names of any of them because I don't watch daily news in any of these in the United States, but if it's coming from them, they don't need to question it, and then suddenly that agenda is pushed, and that's going to... It doesn't matter if it's true or false, or if there is an agenda against them or anything. That is enough to just ruin the reputation with enough people.
This is another issue with journalism in general. Certainly in this country, it's never going to be the same amount of people that read or see the retraction of a story. No. You know, it's like when the Daily Mail, you know, prints a story saying that, you know, 50% of the Muslims in the UK are affiliated with terrorists. They haven't done that specific story yet, but they probably will at some point.
Oh, like the fucking guy! The guy on the bridge! Remember the guy on the bridge? After the stuff that happened in London, and he had like all sorts of stats and figures based on...
Oh, him? Yeah, I do.
he got stats and figures from fucking somewhere, so that idiot's reading something. He was...
I know, but a lot of his stuff... Totally just thrown me off track, but the guy that you're talking about is like affiliated with the English Defence League and all that, but he was quoting numbers from, or about, the magazine of IS, basically, or Al Qaeda.
What's it called? It's got a really happy name. It's called like Pride or something.
It's called something mental, like Momentum. It's not Momentum because that's like the Labour organisation that's behind Jeremy Corbyn. But
it's not Momentum.
But it is called something nuts. I would need to look it up.
But anyway, the only reason I was mentioning him is because he was quoting numbers.
But he was quoting that he was talking about the amount of Muslims in the UK who had downloaded that magazine. And he was talking about something, in here you can find how to do this, how to do that, blah, blah. He clearly read the magazine, right? Now, where do you get the information about how many people have downloaded this? I had a look into it, and the numbers that he got had came from The Sun, but they were just the amount
Another reputable
source. It was like 15,000 people in Britain. It didn't state that they were Muslims, because how could they fucking possibly know? Because all they have is like an IP address within the UK. So it could be anybody, it could be folk.
It's Sharia IPs though.
Actually, yeah, obviously. Yeah. People who have read the article might go and download it. I actually, searched for it and had to look at it due to hearing him talk about it to fact check. So you could find that half of the people that have actually read that.
Because of everything we search for these podcasts, I've stopped looking at things. I'm definitely on fucking watch lists all over the place. Like I find myself on websites to do with things like terrorism and stuff like that I probably shouldn't be on. But as long as you can read the info that goes along with it.
But yeah, we'll put the video of that guy talking up because he was talking a hell of a lot of shite. But yeah, one of the things he was talking about was that magazine. What was I talking about before you started talking about him?
You had been talking about
I was right.
the poll.
No, Inspire. That's what it was called. Inspire. Anyway, right. Forget about all that. Point I was making was retractions. You're never going to get the same amount of people reading them because the Daily Mail can print a story and say, whatever they want to say that is completely denigrates a big section of society, which they do fairly often, and afterwards they'll print a retraction. They say it could have been a front page story, big headline, this is what's happening, and then they print a retraction a week later on page 29 in tiny little writing that takes up like a quarter of a page. So you're never going to get the same amount of people reading that, and it was the same. The Jon Snow thing, again, my understanding is that they actually kind of retracted it on the same night in the same show, but it was near the end of the show, and it wasn't because it was he was obviously getting it fed to him in his ear, and I believe he announced it at the end of an interview which he cut short to do it. I don't think even he at that point made it clear that they had named the wrong man. So I don't know what happened on Channel 4 News the next night because I wasn't watching it. Now, I would suggest that due to the nature of what was happening in London that day, far more people would have been watching the national news than on an average night, and those people, a big percentage of them wouldn't have been watching it the next night, so won't have seen the retraction. So yeah, what you're saying is right enough. There could be a bunch of people out there that still believe that Trevor Brooks carried that out. There are no doubt still a bunch of people in America that believe that Hillary Clinton's linked to a paedophile ring in a pizza shop in Washington.
It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever. I mean, anyway.
But yeah, once you put something out in the public eye, in the public sphere, it's there. And I think I've made that point before about like Trump quotes,
Well, it's like with social media as well. Like because of it, it means stuff spreads so fast, and it spreads in the form of like a meme, a meme, a meme,
a
meme.
It's definitely a meme.
And yeah, as soon as it becomes that, it gets shared by a million people that are all looking at it. I mean, nobody fact checks a meme. Like nobody does that. Do you know what I mean?
I do that shit.
Well, I mean, I find myself doing it, but that's because it would make this podcast really difficult if I didn't.
Oh, but I did it before anyway because I'm a fucking sado. But I'm like, if I see something that like in any way makes me go, that doesn't sound right, and I'll go and look at it. Even if even more so nowadays, if I find myself thinking, oh yeah, that's right, then I'm like, well, no, apply the same logic, go and check. You will find stuff that is wrong that you thought was right. However, I have noticed this, and it would be interesting thing to look at long term, maybe out with this or maybe to present findings at some point. But I've been making a point recently of like looking at left wing memes because I think you can probably tell by my chat I'm probably more left wing than right wing, fairly liberal kind of dude. So yeah, when I see left wing propaganda, I'm more inclined to believe it. But what I've been doing recently is I've been checking it, and I've like this week I think I found like 1 out of about 30 that I looked at that weren't factually accurate, whereas look at right wing stuff and there's a lot of holes in it.
And so are you saying that left wing memes are more likely to be factual than right wing memes based on your findings?
Yeah, but I haven't done proper research.
Cool. I'm just asking. Since you said it, just making sure.
But I think we spoke about that in our pilot as well. You were saying that they had, that guy who claimed that he started doing fake news for research and then realised that he could make money out of it. He did it with right-wing news, made a lot of money, did it with left-wing news, wasn't getting as many hits.
Yeah, actually, so yeah, on that, he essentially is an engineer who worked at home, and him and his wife started up some fake news websites. there's a bit of backstory, but the ins and outs of it was he had created it as what he claimed to be a social experiment, and then just to prove that, you know, people will lap up any old shit. Then he discovered that people would lap up any old shit for money, so he kept on doing it. Became less a social justice warrior, more an exploiting asshole. But he then discovered that he would get more hits and more interest on right-wing stuff than he would left-wing stuff. I take it, we can only presume for that has something to do with the particular mindset of someone who is right-wing to left-wing, maybe?
I don't know. I wouldn't like to go that far without doing any proper research, but yeah, it's certainly a point of interest.
If we can get some kind of funding one day, we can research into it.
Yeah. Totally. I'm well up for that. And, you know, I'll start off as a social justice warrior and then start mindlessly exploiting, just like that engineer.
Literally, if anyone wants to pay me and Jerry to do that, the amount of money that he was making was quite a reasonable amount of money.
So. Was it 43 million a day or something like that?
That was kind of the outlandish claim that I made, but I think it was something like $10,000 to $20,000 a month,
which is not to be sniffed at.
I mean, it's £250,000 a year.
Yeah, it's all right.
To pay 20 or 30 writers to write shit articles and do literally fuck all else.
I could write shit articles myself.
That's even better markup then.
Right, so we've talked about Syria, bleak as fuck, I'm afraid. We've talked about Trump and Russia, which is an ongoing story, extremely interesting. I hope, certainly for our listeners in the UK, you'll go and you'll look at the links that we post up that and look at a bit more on it yourself, because, like I say, I don't feel that we're getting as much coverage as we should be about that particular story in the UK right now on the mainstream media. Although it is a big mainstream story in the US.
I mean, it's so fucking relevant just now, like, because of the two of them, like that the way that the Trump administration is certainly being portrayed, the way that it deals with Russia, the fact that we then have Russia and America saber rattling over Syria, like,
the timing of it is interesting.
It's very interesting, and I'm not saying that the reason that that's happening is to make this better.
There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever.
But it does make you wonder what we're being told. What we're being told because it's the right thing to be told, and what we're being told. Like, for example, in the UK, we are not being told any of this to do with, well, not really being told anything to do with the Russian-Trump connection and the way that that's playing out. That might change the view of public opinion and what's going on in Syria, with Russia saying that they are less likely to not engage with American soldiers in Syria. I mean, like, that changes the way that I certainly perceive it.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial for that information to not be shown in the UK and stuff at the moment. I believe, anyway.
But yeah, please go www.notanotherfakenewscast.com. We'll have the links and stuff, and further links, further reading and stuff I'll put up there for this podcast. We're going to end on a
light-hearted one, and not light-hearted like paedophiles and pizza.
Yeah, even more light-hearted.
Even more light-hearted than that. I know it's hard to believe.
I think the most amusing news story for me, I mean, it's amusing. It's also kind of annoying, but the fact that
I find it deeply saddening.
All of this stuff's been going on, and obviously, you know, Brexit has been going on in the UK. We triggered Article 50 and whatever recently as well. Scottish independence potentially happening. Lots of interesting stuff. Theresa May decided in her sort of keynote speech to bring up the fact that the National Trust in Cadbury had decided to take the word Easter out of their egg hunt. They're despicable bastards.
Fuck Theresa May. Honestly, there's no words to describe how much disdain I have for that woman. I mean, we're at the brink of hypothetical war in the Middle East. We've got fucking the country falling apart and possibly definitely stepping out of the EU. Two of the 4 counties that make up the United Kingdom looking to leave and succeed in some way, shape or form back to either being independent or part of another country in Northern Ireland. And she's talking about fucking Easter eggs.
Yeah, but Paul, what about the Easter Bunny? Will somebody not think of the Easter Bunny?
I think you'll find you're talking about the holiday bunny, Jerry.
Well, just the bunny, if we're going to drop the Easter off his name.
Drop the holiday off him as well. I want him working all year round. To be honest, I heard he was claiming benefits, and with the new Tory rules, he's probably not allowed them anywhere.
No, probably not.
No, fucking
Probably
holiday bunny. But yeah, so Theresa May has said that Cadbury's don't want to call their Easter eggs anymore, and it does bring me back to the story of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ being nailed to the cross until he handed out chocolate eggs to all the Romans to let him down from the cross.
No, it was Sunday. Don't be facetious. We all know that what happened was, you know, he was in the tomb, and then when they opened the tomb, it was full of chocolate eggs, and everybody got a chocolate egg.
Oh, it's jumping Jesus with chocolate eggs.
So that's what it's supposed to signify.
But not anymore.
No.
Not anymore, because other religions, which I'm relatively certain don't celebrate Easter anyway, so it probably doesn't make any fucking difference to them.
Well, I mean, first of all, if you go on the National Trust website or the Cadbury's website for these Easter egg hunts,
Call them what they are.
They have them.
Follow the eggs.
Yeah, for these egg hunts, which they have up and down the country in various sort of National Trust owned properties. All of the branding and stuff on the Cadbury's website, they mention Easter massively. They have a big Easter is it's the primary word on the site. Easter egg hunt or whatever it says on there. The National Trust one, if you go in, there's several mentions of Easter. The idea that you know we're trying to airbrush Easter out of Easter is absolute nonsense. I mean, Theresa May keeps talking about how we live in a Christian country. In fact, we're supposed to live in a secular country. You know, it's quite a major part of our constitution and stuff as well. Religion isn't supposed to come into it. But yeah, there's no way that Cadbury's are trying to airbrush Easter out of the Easter egg hunt, because you can see that in their branding. Now, it might be the case that Easter eggs say egg on the front and say Easter in little writing on the back, but I would suggest if you want to sell chocolate eggs, you probably won't be able to sell them all year round, otherwise you're restricting your market somewhat. Also, you probably want to sell them to people that aren't Christians, because otherwise you're restricting your market so much. You know, this is a capitalist society that we live in, Theresa May, and I think for you to pretend that you are in some way against that is slightly fucking hypocritical.
No, do you know what? In fact, I'm going to go almost personally militant. You're fucked Theresa May in this, right? And this is the reason for it. Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the UK, the unelected Prime Minister of the UK, steps forward and talks about how Easter is being removed from fucking
chocolate
eggs. Which fucking...
Well, I'm not sure why Easter was fucking put in with chocolate eggs in the first place.
But you know, I think in the current climate, when we've got enough fucking race tension, and we've got enough religious tension to even make any kind of fucking remote issue in fucking Parliament or by the Prime Minister about how fucking the word Easter is being removed from chocolate eggs. I mean, this isn't we're not teaching Christian kids in school about Jesus because Jesus is an offensive name to someone in Spain. Do you know what I mean? That's not what this is.
It's a way for her to garner support from the sort of fucking wall punching morons who are supporting the EDL and happy to vote for UKIP.
It's a way to fracture society. That's what it is. All it does is it creates a fucking divide.
Society's fractured as it is, though. She's trying to get the support of the people who, you know, who harbour resentment against foreigners. Basically, that's what she's looking to do there by even bringing that up.
But what the fuck she need to do that for?
It's political posturing.
They're literally already the Tories. Did you not know that? Like, the people who are going to vote for her are already Tory supporters, possibly.
They're concerned about UKIP and the rise of UKIP. Although you would suggest that, given that we've just triggered Article 50, there's maybe no need for UKIP anymore. I don't know. I wouldn't have voted for them in the first place, and I didn't vote for Brexit. But yeah, facts of the story are it's not true. We'll post some articles up. We'll post links to the websites so you can judge that one for yourself.
Weirdly, you can get like straight up Christian chocolate eggs.
Oh yeah. There's the Archbishop of York is a guy.
Tom.
No, Tom York. Oh, love the man. Anyway, the Archbishop of York, whose name escapes me right now, but I'll post up an article for that dude as well. He's a big fan. He's a big fan of, his name's John Sentamu, probably pronouncing that wrong. He's a big fan of the Meaningful Chocolate Company, who...
Other chocolate companies are available.
Yeah, well, much more successful ones. But they create a Christian egg, specifically Christian egg, and the way that the Archbishop of York goes on about them, you reckon he's probably on commission. We actually did a concerted search through Company's house to in some way try and tie him, because we were so convinced he must be making some dough off it.
I looked at the last 4 directors of the company and their affiliation with the Christian church.
He goes on and on about them in the national press all the time. So the Archbishop is frequently...
Fucking loves them.
He's frequently outspoken on the issue of religion being airbrushed from religious holidays. He's frequently spoken out against Darth Vader and Postman Pat themed Easter eggs being sold in supermarkets, because what we should have is a Jesus themed egg like we used to get.
You should have like a dead, probably fake zombie man themed egg rather than a dead, absolutely fake robot themed man as our chocolate eggs.
I mean, that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Not just like
zombie Jesus Easter egg.
Jesus.
I am your father.
Yeah.
God egg.
Yeah. Just the Holy Trinity in there.
Holy Trinity of Easter eggs.
Yeah. In fact, I'm now thinking that there was a lot of religious symbology in Star Wars.
Right, if you think about it, probably.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader,
Obi-Wan Kenobi, just like...
and Luke Skywalker are the sci-fi Holy Trinity.
Would it not be Yoda or Leia? Why Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I don't know, I'm just waiting for that.
Oh, is it because...
Well, because he dies and then he's floating about in the background, isn't he?
Just like the Holy Ghost.
Just like the Holy Ghost.
And also the Holy Ghost was once the master and is now was once the teacher and is now the pupil.
I don't know.
That's what was in Star Wars though.
Oh yeah, in Star Wars, not in
Not
church.
in the Bible.
No, not in the Bible, no.
That's why the Bible's less fun than Star Wars.
Yeah, I'd go for that. That's our... If Star Wars are looking for any more quotes for their posters...
more exciting than the Bible.
Not another fake newscast.
We will happily...
4.5 stars.
Happily endorse it. Did have got another star? That had to be 5.5 stars, and we'd be asked to retract a star at that point.
Yeah. I also... One thing that I forgot to bring up earlier is that Cadbury was a Quaker. Quakers don't fucking celebrate Easter. I never celebrated Easter, so why it's a big deal?
Porridge, though.
So why it's a big deal that fucking Cadbury's, who are a Quaker company who never supported Easter, would all of a sudden not support Easter?
Also, it's a fucking American company that, by the way, doesn't pay any fucking tax anyway. So fucking difference does that make?
Yeah.
And I mean, not the American company, that might have just been slander, they might pay tax, but Cadbury is a standalone company, they were paying fuck all tax.
Hershey bought them, didn't they?
Somebody bought them, certainly somebody bought them, but all of that aside, Cadbury paid about as much tax last year as I did, so they can get to fuck.
Yeah, I'd go for that.
It's my standing.
I don't really even like Cadbury chocolate either. I'm a Galaxy man. Which brings us back to Star Wars.
Which brings us back to the Star Wars show.
Galaxy Easter egg far, far away. Anyway, I think that's probably enough for one podcast.
Say only an hour and a half, Jerry. We've managed to
skim
some time.
Some of the feedback we got was that we might have been a wee bit long, so yeah, we've tried to shorten it up a little bit. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next month. Please do engage with us on Twitter, on Facebook.
Email if you've got like a big ass long thing you want us to say.
Yeah. Our email address is info@notanotherfakenewscast.com. You can there's a contact us form on the homepage of the website as well. So yeah, lots of ways to get in touch, interact, suggest things you want us to speak about, challenge us on stuff. We're happy to open a dialogue and we're happy to be proved wrong.
Only challenges and stuff we've said. Don't challenge us in other ways.
Don't challenge us to a duel.
I know, obviously, don't challenge Annika's where set a set of tasks that I have to complete in a small amount of time, because I'm really bad at that.
Unless it's an Easter egg hunt. Oh, sorry, I mean egg
holiday
hunt.
egg hunt.
Egg hunt.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Holiday egg hunt.
That's Jeremy Hunt you're thinking.
Absolutely. So yeah, the other thing is keep an eye peeled. I think that's the right words for it. On Facebook, because I'm going to have information regarding Anchor. Like I said, it's like podcast Twitter. It's a little. It gives you the chance to interact with us in real time. You can say things back to us. We can hear it. We can put out shows. We'll be putting out a few shows hopefully every week between me and Jerry. And yeah, that should be interesting. Give us something new to talk about and something new to do. So I think on that note, that's us done for today.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Honestly, the other thing is, it's been overwhelming the amount of people that have listened to us, and considering that we're not on iTunes or anything yet, we will be soon-ish, but we're certainly not yet, and we've still managed to have substantially more listens than I thought I was going to get. And yeah, keep it up, keep listening to us, because it makes me feel good about myself and feeds my ego.
Yeah, and thanks for all the nice feedback, all the constructive criticism, you know. Keep interacting with us, keep listening, and yeah, thanks for your support. Peace out.
Yep, thanks very much. See you later on, guys. Bye.